Some people move on, but not us.
What is going on, everyone? My name is Sean O'Connell. I'm the managing director here at CinemaBlend, and it is time for me to spoil Avengers Endgame for you. So if you're watching this video, that means that you have seen Avengers Endgame and you're ready to hear my spoiler-filled review of all of the reasons why I currently view this to be the best MCU movie. But also, as I've been saying on social media and in other videos, this is my new favorite movie of all time. So I want to get into the details. I want you to go down and hit subscribe and turn on your notifications so you can keep up with everything we're doing here at CinemaBlend. But I also want to point out the fact that if you've stumbled on this video by accident and you want to hear a review that has no spoilers in it, I recorded one of those for you also. We have it on our channel. I'm going to put it up here right now. You can go access it. If you haven't seen the movie, go watch that one instead. The rest of us, let's dive into all the reasons why Avengers Endgame works, using every single spoiler in the book. Here we go. First and foremost, the Russo brothers have been saying that this movie is going to be a culmination to everything that happens in the Marvel Cinematic Universe up until this point, calling everything in Phase 1, 2, and 3 the Infinity Saga, which means they have to deliver on some significant emotional narrative arcs coming to a close. And I feel that they did that with two of their most important characters, namely Iron Man and Captain America. And one of the questions that I am dying to ask them, should I ever get the chance, is that in the creation of the two-movie arc that is essentially Infinity War and Endgame, was it always going to be Tony dies and Cap lives a life but gets to die under his own terms? Because there are a lot of different ways that they could have gone with Tony, especially now that he has a family, a daughter. He could have stayed with Pepper, could have stayed really happy. In fact, one of the reasons why he agreed to participate in the plan in the first place is that, yes, he cracked time travel, which of course his arrogance as a genius meant that he always was going to have to sort of figure out that formula. But he said, I cannot sacrifice what I lost. And yet he ends up doing exactly that by putting on the gauntlet that he creates and being the one that snaps Thanos and his entire army out of existence.
I know I said no more surprises, but I was really hoping to pull off one last one.
Cap, meanwhile, gets to go back in time, gets to live the life that Tony always said to him he should have. And I think the endings for each of the characters is extremely fitting. And truthfully, look, if the MCU as an experiment started with Iron Man, it should end with Iron Man, right? And Tony being able to say one last time,
I am Iron Man,
before he does his snap is poetic. People complain to a certain extent that Endgame is fan service. I don't think that's the right way to put it. I think that these are moments that we as a fan base have earned, that we wanted to see. We want to see the hero's triumph. With Cap in particular, we want to see him back with Peggy. Like I said going into Endgame, that if the movie gives me an ending where Cap is able to use time travel to go back and be with Peggy, then that's all I could ever want. And I think that's all that the fans of that character and these movies in general, that's all we kind of ever really wanted. We wanted that happy ending for Cap, right? Like he got buried in the ice on a sacrificial mission against his own will. He missed that dance with his special girl, and it's something that got referenced in all the different movies, and especially in the Captain America movies that Joe and Anthony Russo did. And so you knew that if the brothers were going to get a chance to pay off that tease, to bring Cap back to Peggy. And again, the final scene in Avengers Endgame, if this is considered the culmination of this journey of these characters, that final scene in Avengers Endgame is as perfect as it can be. It's Cap and Peggy dancing back in their timeline. They kiss, the movie ends. It's fantastic. It's sad because I don't think that we will see any more stories with those two characters. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about the fact that putting Cap in the past means that Evans could revisit him and there could be stories of Cap sort of fighting different people throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s. Do I want to see that? I mean, absolutely. I would love to see those stories. But I also think that Evans can ride off into the sunset and be happy with what he accomplished. as Captain America. Let's talk about the three acts of the movie and why I think that they are really brilliant in the way that the Russos did it. They said along the way that Infinity War and Endgame, while they are two halves of a story that eventually are going to complement each other, that they're completely different movies. What they didn't tell us is that Endgame essentially delivers three movies inside of one movie also, because each of its three acts, which each last about an hour long, deliver their own completely different tone to what they're trying to accomplish. The first act is a very sorrowful and compassionate discussion about, like, how do Earth's mightiest heroes pick up the pieces after they lose. And every time you sort of think you figured out where the movie is going to go, it figures out a way to completely shock us. I said in the non-spoiler review that it's really hard to spoil a movie like Endgame, because even if you've heard like one little detail, it still doesn't prepare you for the fact, like, okay, so Tony comes back, right? But you don't understand that Carol is the one who saves him. That's a huge reveal. And you can kind of figure a lot of this stuff out if you paid close enough attention to the trailer. But I didn't expect them to confront Thanos as early on as they do. And no one, I'm telling you, no one expected Thor to behead Thanos. Like, that was the first major shock that dropped in the movie. The first of many, many, many major shocks that dropped throughout the movie. So the first act is really just let's sit in everything that Thanos accomplished and how painful this is going to be, and how do we move. Like, there's a poster on the wall of the self-help group of, like, how do we move on without these people, and that all of the Avengers are having a really hard time. Well, the trick becomes when Scott Lang joins the party. Essentially, he gets released from the quantum realm by a kind of a funny convenience, right? The rat walking across the button that Hope was not able to push releases Scott from the quantum realm. He's able to explain time travel, in which then Endgame shifts into its second movie for fans, which is the time heist. The fact that there is a time heist in Avengers Endgame blows my mind.
Right?
Like, when Marvel fans were sort of sitting around speculating, like, what amazing things could Endgame possibly do, we used set photos that seemed to indicate that Ant-Man was going to be back at the Battle of New York from the first Avengers movie, right? And it was like, wouldn't that be really cool if they somehow time traveled back to reverse the actions of Thanos, or maybe cut him off at the past in a Back to the Future Part 2 kind of way? Well, you know what? They did it. And as I watched it, my teenage son was next to me, and he's the one who'll tell you that my mouth was just hanging open, and I just kept muttering to myself over and over again, like, oh my God, like, they're actually going to try a time heist movie. They're actually going to jump back into the previous films of the MCU and interact with the Avengers from the first movie. You see Tony doing a Marty McFly as he basically works his way around his former penthouse and sees the team capturing Loki. They're trying to get the stones. You see Rhodey and Nebula going back to the events of the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and they use Star-Lord footage, and I'm going to guess Chris Pratt probably recorded some additional stuff, because the joke of Star-Lord singing his song with his headphones on was hilarious and hit really well. And then you see, of course, Black Widow and Hawkeye going to retrieve the Soul Stone, and that leads to our first major sacrifice of the movie. But if Endgame as a movie, you know, hung its hat on the concept of the way the Avengers are going to reverse the course of Infinity War is going to be a time heist where they have to jump back through the movies of the MCU and get the stones before Thanos is able to, that alone would be a satisfying conclusion to me. Like, I would love to see that movie play out. You get Captain America 2019 versus Captain America 2014. You get Black Widow's sacrifice. You get Captain Marvel being fantastic. Like, I was on the fence about Captain Marvel. I liked it more on a second viewing, her origin story. And I was curious to see how the Russos were going to use Brie Larson, and in fact, they used her perfectly. Like, I think she's a fantastic addition to this world, and I think she's great in Endgame. All of this stuff is fantastic before you even get to the final battle, which is the battle against Thanos, where everybody is on screen together. They return everybody who was dusted, and you get, again, some will call it fan service. I will call it emotional beats that the movie earned and that the MCU gives to fans as a reward for all of their support for these 11 years and 21 previous movies. And I'm getting chills even just thinking about it. Captain America finally getting to say, Avengers assemble, and have the entirety of the MCU behind him. The fact that Joe and Anthony Russo thought that they could even attempt this is insanity. But they did it. They walked the tightrope for 22 films. They delivered an ending that, to me, is beyond satisfying. Like, the movie delivered all of the beats that I needed it to deliver, that I wanted to see, and then some. Yes, they did time travel, which I thought they were going to do, but they did it in a way that was mind-blowing to me. By putting them into the Battle of New York, by putting them into the first Avengers, by building on the narrative, by showing me different sides of that movie, by going into the first Guardians of the Galaxy, by going back to Thor: The Dark World and making Thor's reunion with his mom. They brought Rene Russo back, and I don't think Natalie Portman's in that. I think that's recycled footage. But yeah, they made what is arguably the worst movie in the MCU, Thor: The Dark World. They made it emotionally significant again. You'll be able to go back and watch The Dark World, and when Frigga dies, you'll know that, there's going to be a scene later where she'll see her son, and she'll know that, she's seeing him again, and she's letting him move on. They brought relevance to Thor: The Dark World. That's one of the greatest accomplishments of Avengers Endgame. They made Thor: The Dark World relevant. So yes, I think that the movie delivered. I had a checklist of things as a Marvel fanatic that I was hoping to see. The movie checks them all, and then the movie took another sheet of paper and added to my list and added a ton of things that I didn't even know that I wanted to see, and then checked those also. It is, to me, the greatest accomplishment that I've ever seen on screen. Endgame, and the way that it concludes the MCU as a whole, and I have to look at a big picture, is the greatest cinematic achievement of my lifetime. I cannot comprehend how this story holds itself together for 11 years and 22 films. It's impossible. It's a magic trick. The Russos pulled off a magic trick, and I don't think we're ever going to see anything like this again. It's a 5 out of 5, right? It's a 5 out of 5. To me, it's the best Marvel movie ever. And I don't see what's potentially, I've said this in my previous review for years. When everybody asks me what's my favorite movie of all time, I've always said the first Die Hard, right? Love Die Hard. This movie replaced it. This movie is now my answer to the what is your favorite movie of all time. And again, you guys see, I'm a Marvel junkie, right? I love this stuff. I grew up on the comics. I love the characters. You've seen my shirts. I've got Spider-Man shirts and Captain America shirts, and I love this world. And the fact that it has existed in this form for this amount of time and so successfully, anytime a character or a property that you love gets adapted by Hollywood, you head into it with some reservations. Don't ruin it, right? Just try your best, but don't ruin it. And listen, as a Spider-Man fan, I've lived through Spider-Man 3. And as much as I liked the Mark Webb films, I understand that they have issues. And so to see a Marvel Cinematic Universe spelled out so beautifully, and to know that we're still going forward, there's still going to be plenty of places that Marvel can go, but we'll always have this Infinity Saga. We'll always have these 22 films that started with Iron Man and introduced all of these characters, and cast them so perfectly to me. Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, Benedict Cumberbatch, Tom Holland, Chadwick Boseman, and the entire cast for Black Panther. It's just incredible casting. It's incredible casting, and I don't see how it's going to be topped. For that reason, let's talk about this briefly, because I don't think that the idea of an Avengers team is going to exist in the MCU anymore. It almost feels like they don't need an Avengers team. But they do have a sort of protection in place with Captain Marvel, now being hyper aware of what's going on her home planet. And there are plenty of other superheroes in the world, but I don't see them putting a team together because I'm not quite sure who their leader would be. Yes, we have a new Captain America, but I'm not 100% sure that Sam would be the person who puts an Avengers team together. We no longer have a Tony Stark, and I think everyone's going to sort of scatter to their wins, where Thor will go off with the Guardians. Potentially, what if James Gunn's next sequel is actually called As Guardians of the Galaxy? Like, I think that would be incredible, and also more fat Thor, like as much fat Thor as the MCU wants to give me. I have people complaining about that plot twist with Thor. Get out of here. You're crazy. Like, that was hysterical. Like, that, I loved it. I love the Hemsworth got to play that for an entire 3-hour movie. It was unbelievable. I mean, what type of Avengers movie can live up to what just happened with Infinity War and Endgame? I just don't see it happening. So, I think the concept of Avengers movie is going to go on the shelf for a little while, and everybody's going to sort of get to play out. Like, we know we're going to get Far From Home, that's coming to theaters. Black Widow's getting what I have to assume is a prequel movie now at this point, and we have sequels lined up for the Guardians, for Doctor Strange, for Black Panther. We have the Eternals coming. There's been a few other rumored projects. By the time the Fox Marvel movies go into play with Fantastic Four and the X-Men, there's plenty of things that Marvel can do in Phase 4 and beyond before they even have to think about, oh, Captain Marvel's going to get her own movie. We got to get a sequel. There's too many things that Marvel can actually do at this point before they even have to think about doing another Avengers movie. So I would not be surprised if the Avengers don't get a film anytime soon. But for now, let's just celebrate what Marvel has accomplished over the course of this MCU, and especially what they did with Endgame. They brought closure to the Thanos storyline. They gave us a scene, the battle scene, where everyone in the MCU participated. That happened. Like, that's a real thing that happened. There's a moment in this movie, like, there's so much geeky Marvel goodness in this movie that there is a scene where Captain America, who can now wield Thor's hammer, shouts out, "Hey, Queens," and throws the hammer, and Spider-Man catches it with his web and rides away while holding an Infinity Gauntlet that Iron Man has created. And this is a thing that happens in a movie, and in the context, it makes complete sense. So, literally, there's no better time right now to be a Marvel fan. It's not going to get better than this. And in fact, we also just sort of brace for the fact that there's going to have to be an emotional come down, right? Far From Home should be great, but it's not going to be this. Whatever comes next is going to be, I'm sure, entertaining on a Marvel level, but it's never going to be this. Go out to the theater, support Avengers Endgame. If you've seen it, go back and see it again. And continue to support CinemaBlend. We love that you guys keep coming by the YouTube channel here, watching the videos that we're posting, following along as we react to things like Game of Thrones or starting to review these different movies. So make sure you don't miss any of our videos by going down, hitting subscribe, turning on your notifications, and the minute we post anything, you guys will be alerted to it here on CinemaBlend's YouTube page.
If we can't protect the Earth, you can be damn sure we'll avenge it. Whatever it takes.